Hello there, everybody, and happy Star Wars Day! It's that time of year, and I'm going to be reviewing the prequel saga. So, every year, every Star Wars Day, I review a Star Wars movie. I don't know if I'm going to be doing it like just once a year. I had an idea. If this video does well, maybe I'll review the other two prequel movies next week and then the week after. But for today, I'm reviewing Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So this came out in 1999, so 25 years ago. Last year was the 25th anniversary. I wanted to review it, but I was already reviewing Return of the Jedi. But I gotta say, this movie is definitely controversial because the Star Wars movies, you could probably say all the Star Wars movies could be considered controversial. But originally, the prequels were not well loved back then, but now they're loved to this very day. And there is a lot of things you can probably cherry pick with the prequels saga, but it all started with The Phantom Menace, starring Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, and we even got little Jake Lloyd as Anakin Skywalker. And it is directed and written by George Lucas. So, George Lucas easily made the probably not easily made the prequels, but he had his story down for the prequels for what he wanted to do with them. Ever since the original trilogy ended years ago, people were wondering, when's the next Star Wars movie? But then we finally got it with this movie. Yeah, there was the Ewok movies, but those were like straight to TV movies. But this was the big one. It gathered Star Wars fans together. Like, there were literal lines of people wanting to go see this movie. And they gave their thoughts on this movie on various news, like, broadcastings. And this is like this peak nostalgia. I wasn't born when The Phantom Menace came out, but if you got a story with The Phantom Menace, definitely talk about it below, since this movie is easily people's favorite of the prequels, or Revenge of the Sith. But for me, this is probably my second favorite. But I might as well go over recapping the whole story and talk about what I think of it as I review this. So, it's literally about the Separatists trying to take over Naboo with a blockade, and the two Jedi that are sent to negotiate is Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Liam Neeson, as I said earlier, plays Qui-Gon, and I actually really do like Qui-Gon. Honestly, you could probably say he's the protagonist. People get confused at who the protagonist is of this movie. Honestly, it could be Anakin, but he doesn't show up till later. But I don't know. I feel like all these characters come together really well, in my opinion. But Liam Neeson's got that wiseness in his voice as Qui-Gon Jinn. Like, you feel the connection between him and Anakin throughout this movie. But I'll probably get more into that once we get further. Ewan McGregor is amazing as Obi-Wan. He even got to choose his own lightsaber hilt for this movie, even in the behind the scenes. But when the Jedi do negotiate, it's revealed to be a trap by Palpatine, who sends a group of droids to take them out, and by also order of Newt Gunray, who's infamous in this movie, who's basically the Trade Federation leader. He's basically that cowardly politician throughout the Star Wars prequels. He even appears in the Clone Wars. But once that door opens, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon pull out their lightsabers and start destroying droids, and it's quite entertaining. I really do like that opening sequence, where it kind of does remind me of New Hope, because a lot of people love saying the sequels copy the original trilogy, but honestly, I feel like this movie also has some stories that are very similar to New Hope, if you really think about it. But I don't think that's a bad thing, for say, since it has that familiar Star Wars formula, in my opinion. But basically, a bunch of action happens, and even the Jedi try to get through the door. Qui-Gon does, but it doesn't work out. But he's able to get out of the Trade Federation ship by sneaking on board. It's like giant crate full which carries the droids when they sneak past the security when they realize they're surrounded. But the Jedi end up going to Naboo, and this is where we get this infamous character in all of Star Wars, Jar Jar Binks, played by the awesome Ahmed Best. I'm so happy Ahmed Best is still part of Star Wars to this very day, when he played Kellyanne Beck in The Mandalorian, and he's infamous for playing Jar Jar. I feel so bad for Ahmed Best because he was driven to suicide, unfortunately, but thank goodness he survived, and he's still with us to this very day, and I'm so happy he's passionate about this Star Wars, and I'm hoping he does return as Kellyanne Beck. And Jar Jar, I never really liked the character when I was a kid. I thought he looked creepy and goofy, but I don't know. Right now, I don't really mind Jar Jar. I mean, he's not my favorite Star Wars character. I mean, if you like him, that's cool. But I can see why people don't like him. But once they got to the other two prequels, he was toned down a lot. As Lucas probably learned that he probably did annoy a lot of people. But Jar Jar's, like I said, he's okay. And I did like the line that Jar Jar says, like, he's like, "Thank you for saving me, Qui-Gon." And then Qui-Gon's like, "The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here." But I even like how Obi-Wan says, like, "Oh, what's this?" And then they even tell Jar Jar they're gonna get attacked by various droid forces that are coming this way. But Jar Jar tells them about the Naboo city that's underwater, and he's able to show them where it is. And the Jedi do go underwater, and it's actually quite interesting that Naboo has like an underwater like city where all the Gungans hang out. But Jar Jar is basically outcasted by the infamous Boss Nass. Boss Nass is an infamous character in the prequels. Like, he basically looks like a giant frog, and he basically spits a lot, and he even gets parodied in like The Empire Strikes Out, that little Lego special. I thought that was pretty funny. But apparently Qui-Gon's able to work things out to have Jar Jar have a light debt to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. But they're basically able to work things out, and they're able to go on some like submarine where they can escape from the Trade Federation. But we get a bunch of underwater sequences. They bump into a bunch of creatures, and it's quite interesting. But the main thing that goes on throughout this movie is, like, we see Queen Amidala, which is Padme, and earlier it's revealed to not be Padme. The real Padme is in the skies on Naboo. This is revealed later in the movie, but Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are able to save the Queen from the Separatists, who captured them and the various troops, Naboo troops. This is before the clone troopers, but they're able to escape on the Naboo Starfighter, which actually looks really cool as a ship. But once they escape, they are hit by the Trade Federation ship, and a group of droids are sent to go fix the ship, and this is the origin of R2-D2. So R2 is able to go out there, and all the droids get shot off the ship, and it's quite brutal to watch, since I'm not really a fan of when droids, like especially the astromech droids, get shot off. But R2 somehow is able to fix the ship, and it impresses everyone on board, and they're able to introduce R2 to the Queen. And I love how R2's praised. Honestly, people probably didn't feel the need to have R2 show up in this, but I like it because R2 basically witnesses the entire Star Wars saga. All the way from episode 1, all the way to the end with Rise of Skywalker. But they were able to escape to Naboo, but because their ship's damaged, they have to immediately land somewhere, that being Tatooine. But Qui-Gon basically teams up with Padme, Obi-Wan stays behind, and R2 tags along. But they're basically going to look for some parts, and that's where we meet the infamous Jake Lloyd as Anakin Skywalker. People thought it was weird that he was a little boy playing Anakin Skywalker, the man who grew up to be Darth Vader. But honestly, I feel so bad for Jake Lloyd. He is not bad in this movie at all, but since I don't like judging actors, since I myself struggle with acting in doing plays and stuff, so I understand that acting is difficult. But Jake Lloyd did what he could for this movie, and it's unfortunate that he dealt with a lot of mental health issues, and it made things worse when he was bullied as Anakin Skywalker. Like, a lot of people just make fun of him over the role, and he doesn't really like cameras, and he unfortunately deals with some personal stuff, but it seems like he is doing better, which I'm grateful for him. But we get a bunch of infamous scenes where, like, he says, like, "Are you an angel?" to Padme. That scene always just makes me chuckle because it's just like, ugh. I mean, you can probably nitpick any lines with Star Wars, but overall, that's what it's meant to be. But apparently, Anakin is a slave, and his mother, and it's quite tragic. Like, this is what leads to Anakin's downfall to the dark side, because his mother was mistreated by Watto, and then eventually later in Attack of the Clones, which we'll probably get to if we do review Attack of the Clones. But Anakin, the only way he can escape his slave life is if he competes in pod races. But once Qui-Gon meets Anakin, he feels a sort of connection with him. And that's what the connection really works about these two. I just feel the chemistry between Qui-Gon and Anakin. And once we meet Watto, it's like he is like a nasty, like, dude. Like, you just, ugh. He's super gross looking. But apparently, what Anakin can do to get out of his slave life, like I said, is if he competes in a pod race. So Qui-Gon bets on Anakin, so once he learns that he has the highest midichlorian count, and I don't even know what midichlorians are, but apparently that's what creates the life in Force, which they probably were going to explore in the future Star Wars, but I don't know. Tell me what midichlorians are. But I'm kind of jumping a bit, but we also meet C-3PO, which Anakin is building, which is ironic. But I do like the scene between R2 and 3PO. They meet for the first time, and R2 even says he looks naked, which was funny. But during all this, we also have a Sith Lord who is tracking Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's next move. That being Darth Maul. Darth Maul is amazing in this movie. Played by the awesome Ray Park. He had to do a lot of training for this role, and the makeup looks amazing. The horns, and Darth Maul doesn't really talk much in this movie, but he is super badass. I love that hood, his Sith infiltrator. He uses a Sith bot, like, robot to help track them down, like a probe droid. But during all this, Anakin is prepared to compete in the pod race, but his mother is really worried for him because of it's so dangerous, which is completely valid. But he also has an enemy named Sebulba, who's also a nasty character, and he looks just weird in the CGI form, because Lucas went all out with the CGI in this movie. We even get a cameo from Jabba the Hutt, which you can consider maybe a CGI. I thought it was random to see Jabba the Hutt in this movie, but it was super cool looking. Better looking. I don't know if he looked better in Return of the Jedi or in this movie. But he definitely looks better than how he looks in New Hope, since it's a very complicated for Jabba the Hutt. But apparently he's hosting the pod race, and so Boba even messes with Anakin's little pod race, but he ends up racing, and he ends up fixing his pod race once he goes out, and even Qui-Gon earlier tried to give him luck. Not really luck, but telling him the Force will be with him. But Anakin races with his pod race, and the pod race is actually really interesting. I like that aspect of Star Wars, like seeing a bunch of pods race for life in Tatooine. But the best part is Anakin is able to win the pod race, and all the other pod racers end up getting destroyed very brutally. We even see a cameo from Aura Sings, who is apparently in the EU and the new canon. But it was cool seeing that cameo. And also, Quinlan Vos shows up in the background of Tatooine, which was quite nice. Even Warwick Davis made a cameo, who played Wicked the Ewok. But once Anakin wins the pod race, everyone is happy for him. Even his mother is proud for him. But unfortunately, the mom was not freed, only Anakin. But Anakin is able to pursue his dream of becoming a Jedi. Just like how Luke wanted to leave Tatooine so he could become a pilot. But it actually is tragic the way Anakin has to say goodbye to his mom. The two hug, and Anakin's able to move forward. But when Qui-Gon and Anakin tried to escape on the Naboo starfighter, a mysterious Darth Maul shows up. And we get a small lightsaber duel between the two. It's kind of hard to watch the lightsaber duel since it's in the desert. But Qui-Gon's able to escape at the last second. And that's where they discover the Sith. And some people have issue because a Sith showed up in the Acolyte, and they think that retcons them meeting the Sith for the first time in this movie. And it I don't know, it's a huge controversy for some reason. But like, overall, it does not retcon the Phantom Menace, honestly. But even if it did, Star Wars gets retconned all the time. It still happened, though. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But the Naboo starfighter is able to go to Coruscant, and this is where the movie kind of just slows down for me, because a lot of people say the Phantom Menace is the most boring. I don't agree with that. I think it's really Attack of the Clones for me. But a bunch of stuff happens. Anakin's is not really allowed to train under the Jedi because they think he's too old, and his compassion for his mother is what's driving him to some sort of darkness. And we even see a bunch of Jedi, I actually thought the Jedi cameos were cool. We see like Yoda. Originally he was a puppet in this movie, but as the Blu-ray came out for the Phantom Menace for the first time, we got CGI Yoda. But it was interesting to see Frank Oz return as Yoda in puppet form. We also see Samuel Jackson as Mace Windu, which was awesome. We even see the Jedi report of the Sith. And of course, Ki-Adi-Mundi says the Sith have been extinct for a millennium, and that's now a controversy over the Acolyte. I don't know why, but the Sith have been extinct, have always been around. The Jedi just think they're extinct, but they're wrong. But the more interesting aspect about it is that Count Dooku was a Jedi during this movie, as you saw in Tales of the Jedi, which had an episode that took place during the Phantom Menace, which was awesome. But Anakin tries to form a connection with Padme. He has a crush on her, and he even wants to say goodbye to her, to the Queen. But of course, they're denied. And we get a bunch of political stuff Palpatine is basically going to be the Chancellor with Chancellor Valorum, and that stuff gets boring. We get a bunch of cool cameos from, like, E.T., which now people think E.T. is part of the canon of Star Wars. I don't know. You think what you think, but like, things take a turn when everyone decides to go back to Naboo to not let the people die but Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, R2, and a bunch of others go back to Naboo, and they're basically going to sneak on board to the main Trade Federation. I don't know not the main. It was like a Naboo base or whatever. But they have to recruit an army. That's where they meet up with Boss Nass, and they're basically gonna team up with the Gungans, which are Jar Jar species, and they're basically gonna have an army. And we get a nice scene where it's revealed that Padme was disguised as a Naboo guard, and Sabe was pretending to be Padme the whole time. But basically, they have an army to take down the Separatists who are trying to take over Naboo, and basically, they basically sneak into the Naboo base, and apparently they do get attacked by the various droids, and Anakin has to stay in a cockpit the whole time, with R2 getting pulled in the battle as well, and all the Naboo starfighters leave to go attack the Trade Federation ship. But things take a big turn once they try to enter the room, and we see Darth Maul, full scale, ready to pull out his lightsaber. And I even like where Qui-Gon says, "We'll handle this." And the Jedi turn on their lightsabers, with Maul taking off his hood and pulling out his double-bladed lightsaber. So apparently, earlier in a comic book, Exar Kun had the double-bladed lightsaber, and apparently that was the first time the double-bladed lightsaber showed up, but this is the first time it showed up in film, and it was definitely unique seeing a double-bladed lightsaber for the first time in Star Wars. But we get the awesome Duel of the Fates, which is basically Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. John Williams, by the way, is amazing that he's able to compose for this movie. There's so many good themes throughout this whole movie, and it's very awesome that he was still composing even at 90, which is awesome, which I have a lot of respect for John Williams. But basically the lightsaber duel happens. The Padme leads the group of Naboo troopers to take out the Vice Newt Gunray, while Jar Jar and his friends of Gungans decide to attack the various battle droids and armies, and it's like a huge battle ensues, and Anakin is thrown into the battle of Naboo up in space. With the help of R2, they're able to go to the Trade Federation ship, and Anakin is somehow able to take out the whole Trade Federation ship, just like how Luke Skywalker destroyed the Death Star. But the awesome lightsaber duel keeps on going. Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan are jumping on various platforms. Obi-Wan's kicked off the platform. Qui-Gon fights Maul for a bit until they reach a laser gate, and Maul is able to wait for whatever their next move is. But the main thing that happens is, like, Padme is able to meet up with Newt Gunray, but they end up getting trapped by the various destroyers, and Anakin ends up getting trapped in the Trade Federation ship. But unfortunately, during the Darth Maul fight, Qui-Gon's able to fight Maul near like a giant hole in the Naboo platform, and unfortunately, Qui-Gon is outmatched by Maul and is killed. Even Obi-Wan's no is pretty wild. But it seems like an all-time low, as even the Gungans and Jar Jar are surrounded by droids, But our characters are able to rise up when Padme is saved by Sabe and the various troops. Anakin's able to destroy the giant Trade Federation ship with R2, and Anakin even says, "Now this is pod racing," that famous line. But he somehow is able to destroy the Trade Federation ship, causing all the droids to shut down. Even Jar Jar, who did various silly things to take out the droids. But the last thing that happens is Obi-Wan is able to fight Maul one-on-one. And he is able to take out Maul even though Obi-Wan gets almost thrown down the hole, and he's able to use the Force to use Qui-Gon's lightsaber and even chops off Darth Maul's legs. And we thought Darth Maul was dead. And even if you just watch the movies, you probably think Darth Maul's dead. But then, because of Darth Maul's popularity, people probably do realize Darth Maul survived. He fell down the hole, and he somehow survived. And then we see him in the Clone Wars with giant spider legs, and it's very awesome. But Obi-Wan's able to have a final moment with Qui-Gon, who unfortunately dies. But he does tell Obi-Wan he's the chosen one, and even the Jedi didn't agree with Anakin being the chosen one. But he tells Obi-Wan to train him, Anakin, and Obi-Wan says he will, even though he didn't trust him at first, but now he does. But Qui-Gon does have a funeral at Naboo. He's burnt. Originally, when I saw this as a kid, I thought that was Darth Maul's body, but no, it was Qui-Gon's. But Yoda and even Mace Windu have a talk about the rule of two, only two Sith, the Master and an Apprentice, and it is further explored in the expanding universe with Darth Bane. But the day is saved from the Separatists, and our characters have a celebration, and it's quite an interesting scene. And it's just like how New Hope ended. The story rhymes. It's like poetry. But Anakin becomes a Padawan, and Padme's given a giant globe thing that she also gives to Boss Nass, and the movie ends with the day with celebration on Naboo, and that's the Phantom Menace. Whew, that was quite a lot to say, but the Phantom Menace, I probably did nitpick it a lot, but I actually really enjoyed the Phantom Menace overall. Is it my favorite Star Wars movie? No, but it's definitely the top prequel movie for me. It has a good action, a lot of good story. There's some boring moments here and there, but overall, I think this is definitely a memorable Star Wars movie for sure, and a lot of nostalgia that I really enjoyed overall with this movie. And there was a lot of work that had been done with this movie. So yeah, I don't know if next year, if you want me to review Attack of the Clones, or I just review it weekly, and then maybe next year we'll review the sequel trilogy. So we shall wait and see. So happy Star Wars Day, everyone. I hope you enjoy it. There's definitely a lot to talk about with Star Wars. I'm definitely going to review the Tales of the Underworld and the rest of Andor Season 2. But anyway, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you always.